Insellem lil-telespettaturi kollha li qegħdin jarawna live fuq Facebook, fuq il-page, fuq il-paġna tal-YMCA. U nilqakom għal-tieni programm, ħansejħulu programm jew diskussjoni illi il-YMCA ħejjet għalikom bl-isem ta' Fostering Relationships. Miegħi għandi lill-Anita Portelli li hija psikotherapista, kif ukoll il-Shirley Galea li jew ukoll hija psikotherapista. U forsi nibda bikom billi insaqsikom forsi tagħtu ftit background fuq min intom, x'tagħmlu, x'inhu x-xogħol tagħkom, ħalli anke dawk li qegħdin jisimgħuna jkunu jafu ma' min ħanitkellmu llum.
Okay, nibda jiena?
Anita tista' tibda.
All right. Mela, psychotherapist, naħdem bħala freelance psychotherapist, informa parti minn Crisis Resolution Malta, nintuħsib incoming calls ta' nies li għaddejjem xi diffikultà f'ħajjithom, anki suicidal calls ukoll, konna ħafna different types of inquiries. Noħsib ukoll support group, Malta endometriosis, nisa li bagħtu minn gynecological problem, u nifforma parti wkoll mill-Infertility Network Malta, l-Vice President u t-tnejn f'dak il-qasam ukoll. Interessata ħafna fuq health issues minn ikollu chronic illnesses, mhux ġast il-persuna stess, anke il-familja tagħhom, so my aim is to support them in coping, with their chronic illnesses on a psychological level. Ovvjament hemm il-physical u hemm nadrabi ninsew li hemm psychological impact ukoll meta jkun hemm chronic illness.
Shirley minn naħa tiegħek.
Mela, Shirley, jiena psychotherapist. Xi senta ilu ħafna listening to you li hija online therapy platform u qiegħda jiena u hemm xi kollegi oħra tiegħi, psikoterapisti li fija niltaqgħu ma' nies illi jkunu jridu jagħmlu terapija online, chat jew video. Apparti minn hekk nagħmel ukoll xogħol ta' psikoterapija l-iskejjel fejn nara l-istudenti, l-familji u l-itfal u teenagers u nagħmel psychotherapy practice fil-privat. Barra minn hekk ukoll naħdem organization illi tagħti online support lil-users. U niltaqa' ħafna ma' problemi ta' ħbieb, problemi ta' relazzjonijiet, problemi ta' self-confidence. U naħseb li s-suġġett tal-lum huwa proprju għalija qed norbot il-musmar fuq rasu għax relationship hija waħda mill-iktar affarijiet li niltaqa' magħha, relationship issues.
All right, forsi xi ħaġa fuq minnaħa tiegħi ħafna nies jafuni bħala CEO tal-YMCA, però llum ħaninżaf ftit dan il-kappell bħala CEO u ħanidħol fir-rol tiegħi bħala psychotherapist ukoll.
Kollega tagħna mill-kollegi.
Tajjeb ngħidu wkoll li studjajt kemm Anita kif ukoll ma' Shirley għamilna l-kors flimkien, ġifieri tlieta li aħna tħallna għal din il-biċċa xogħol ma' xulxin u spiċċajnija ma' xulxin. Min-naħa tiegħi jiena wkoll nara klijenti apparti tal-YMCA fl-aspett ta' psikoterapija u ħafna nies li nara jiena huma dawk li huma koppji jew bi problemi ta' relazzjonijiet u apparti li naħdem ukoll flimkien ma' Anita fejn jidħol il-Crisis Resolution Malta fejn issapportjaw nies li jkunu għaddejjin minn kriżijiet ta' suicide ħanajdu hekk. U bħalissa qiegħed nagħmel ukoll id-dottorat, jiġifieri too much on my plate. Tajjeb ngħidu illi għandna nies li qegħdin jisimgħuna li wkoll huma English speakers, so in a way I will speak in English, so it will be easier for everyone to understand the topic that we have chosen for today, fostering relationships. And my first question to you, so we can start discussing this topic, is in your opinion, what are relationships? I don't know whether Shirley, you can start from your end, and then Anita can share her views about what are relationships to you.
Relationships. It's a big word. It means a lot. But I think if I had to summarize it, I would say that a relationship is an exchange. It's an exchange of energy. We meet with another person. We exchange ideas. We exchange a smile. We exchange ideas, feelings, thoughts. And if it's a good relationship, through this thing that's happening between us, this contact, we grow.
Mm-hmm.
And we become someone better. It can happen to us. It can happen even to the other person. And that is why we look forward to a relationship, because a relationship changes us. I think this is one of the basic tenets of a relationship.
Anita, from your end?
So, I mean, if we had to take the literal meaning, open up a dictionary, we refer to it as being related, communicating with others. I think people have different definitions of what a relationship is. I think in order for a relationship to be successful, it needs key ingredients. I think communication and boundaries. And I think we automatically assume that the word relationship is about relationship with an intimate partner. When we hear relationships, the first thing that comes to mind, your boyfriend, your partner, your girlfriend. It's also our relationship with our colleagues, with our friends. But I think something that we often forget about is the relationship with ourselves. So I'm hoping that during the webinar today, we can discuss that further, the actual relationship one-on-one.
Yes. In fact, I was going to mention something about this, because when we speak about relationships, we always think about couple relationships. Mm-hmm. And this is why YMCA have chosen this topic, because everyone is speaking about loneliness. Even YMCA is speaking about loneliness. But I think that it is a really good topic, because whilst most of us are at home, staying safe at home, we are in a relationship with a lot of people around us, whether it is our partner, whether it is our family, whether they are the friends that we live with. So we are in a relationship with a lot of people around us, as you said, Anita. So I think that it would be great if we can go into these different type of relationships and discuss a little bit, and maybe you can also share from your private practice experience the difficulties that you encounter when you meet clients in your psychotherapeutic room, let's put it that way.
Okay. Right. What shall we kick off with? The subject of who are we in contact with? I think a topic that comes up a lot, and probably Shirley is, I think, more of and has more expertise in this, is parents and children. So at home, the relationship with how this has evolved lately, even during the pandemic, of relationships with children. I don't know, Shirley, if you want to give us some feedback.
When we speak about parents, we are speaking about a very wide group of people. There are parents who are stay-at-home parents, so this pandemic did not affect them so much. There are parents who still had to go outside for work, so work and parenthood was still separate. And then there are parents who had to do big changes to their routine. For instance, I'm getting in mind right now a case which I met, where the parent, the mother, she worked in the health sector. And when this pandemic broke out, she had to leave her home. And it was an incredibly difficult decision to do, because she loved her job. She was a nurse, she's still a nurse. And at the same time, she loved so much her children. And the big conflict was that if I leave my children, will I be abandoning them? Do I put my career before my children? And to decide this, which was something that was totally against what she believed in herself, she wanted to be a good present mother. But to actually make this decision that she had, for their own safety, to leave home, It was not difficult at all. So I think
protect them.
Yes, healthcare workers, they were the people who were not just on the front line because they were facing the risk of the virus, but they also had to make sacrifices in their personal life.
Something I've come across in therapy, in some sessions that I'm doing, is that you mentioned the parents in this particular case and children. So I don't work with many children, but I've had a few cases where some children have actually found this to be a relief. Unfortunately, the reason behind this is because of bullying at school. So now, they've got their online lessons. It's different. Some have 5 lessons a day. So it's very overwhelming for the parents, especially if they're young, because they have to kind of sit with them. Some have 1 or 2 lessons and sort of interact with their peers in that way. But there's a couple who are relieved not to be at school, so they're in their safe place, they're in their home, they're still having their lessons. So it has affected people and children and teenagers in different ways. I don't know if you've come across this as well.
I have met this, and sometimes it depends as well from the character. I teach as well. So today, for instance, I had this online class, and the thing that came out the most was their boredom. They're bored.
They're climbing up the walls. They're really, really bored, yeah.
They've had enough of PlayStation, they've had enough of Netflix, they've had enough of videos. And what they miss the most is the actual physical contact, being in school, seeing their friends, laughing together, playing, eating beside each other. At least this is the feeling I got, that the children, they crave this contact.
So the novelty of staying up late, PlayStation, less homework is
yes, it has waned away now. Now they want to go back to their previous lives.
If we are to go back a little bit to couples, maybe I can also share something from my end. When I work with couples, I always end up working with this issue that almost most of the couples bring to therapy, which is the fact that they have not a lot of time on their hands to be able to be with each other. In fact, I always tell them, in a couplehood, there are 3 people, not 2. There are you 2 as individuals, and then there is the relationship in between, and we have to feed each element in the relationship and balance things out. Now, the problem I'm seeing right now is that there is this kind of issue where before there were this kind of separatedness, where they were, everyone indulged at work, everyone doing their own thing. Now there is this too much contact. People staying at home for over a month who were closed behind doors, staying together. I don't know whether you have experienced this as well, because clients came to me telling me like they've been in a relationship for quite a while, and we're talking about years in a relationship, and suddenly they don't know how to communicate or to be with each other. I don't know your opinion on this.
There is, I am coming across that. I mean, there's obviously a lot of love between many of the couples, and initially it was like, oh great, we're finally going to spend some quality time together, but like what's happening with the school children, there is a bit too much of an enmeshment. They're spending so much time together. I'm just gonna mention something that one of my clients told me recently. It's a bit of a funny anecdote, but it made a lot of sense. The song Jolene? It's by Dolly Parton.
Yes.
So part of the song is, I'm begging of you, Jolene, do not take my man. And my client said to me, I am willing to pay Jolene to take my man because 24 hours on 24 hours is becoming a bit too much. So, there's the 2 extremes now. Philly, there wasn't enough time spent together, and now there is too much connectedness, perhaps. That's the way we can refer to it.
Shirley, from your end, I don't know.
I feel that what happened now we had to so quickly change the rhythm of our relationship. when I think of a relationship, I think of like two people who are connecting and disconnecting. We connect, we joke, we laugh together, we eat something, we see television, and then the day after we separate. And then we connect again. So it's like there's this movement. Yeah. But with what happened, this movement, it had to change. It's like dancing on a big, wild dance floor. And then all of a sudden, this dance floor is very restricted, it becomes very small. And it's like, okay, what do I do now? I have to clash against you all the time. And some people were able to adapt to this, and they did it beautifully. But the problem is when you have a character, which is difficult, when you have someone who can become violent or aggressive. In fact, in China, for instance, there was this study that said that following the pandemic, there were many people who divorced. Even here in Malta, we had organizations reporting that there was an escalation of domestic abuse.
Yes. Yes.
So, well, some people were able to adapt, but others, they suffered a lot because it was not possible to cope with this too much contact.
In fact, I shared this with PBS today because I had an interview before on PBS, and YMCA has this loneliness response line. The third most common thing why people are phoning us is because of family issues, is because of relationship issues, and because some of these calls, they are also reporting domestic violence cases. So I think this has increased. And what brings to mind now is that relationships at the moment are going through a lot of anxiety. I think anxiety issues are increasing. What is your thoughts about this?
Definitely anxiety, and I think a lot of the anxiety is linked to loneliness.
Yes,
that seems to be a topic that is coming up. I mean, social, there's a social isolation, where you are disengaging from activities, from being part of a wider community, and then there's loneliness, I think, which is a bit more subjective. Where your ideals and your feelings are not being met. You're having to sort of isolate yourself. I mean, loneliness can come in many different forms. I don't know, living alone with children or without. So that coping mechanism where you feel alone and that you can't cope. I don't know, not having your own home, not having a car, so you're stuck. Don't have transport to meet people. Also, low income. And even having bad health, that can be a form of loneliness, and also something that has really struck me of late, loneliness where old age forms part of it. I think, I don't know, on a personal level, what I'm saying is that the elderly population are the ones that are perhaps being affected the most by the loneliness, because of their vulnerability, their age and maybe having certain health issues. They're having to self-isolate even more than other parts of the population, and their loneliness is becoming extreme and causing quite a bit of anxiety.
Shirley, I think when we were discussing before, you also mentioned cases of couples who are afraid of losing the relationship during this pandemic time. The situation where on one side we have this fear of being contaminated by COVID, and on the other hand, the fear of losing the relationship, because not everyone is, to use the title that YMCA is using, at home together. There are couples which are not living together.
Exactly. And here comes again the conflict on what to decide. Should I stay at home and keep myself and my family safe? For instance, if someone is in a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, or should I go and meet my girlfriend and risk it? And then the family intervene. For instance, I'm remembering a particular case where this guy who wanted to meet his girlfriend, but his family prevented him from going out. So he was angry at his parents. He could understand his parents. At the same time, his girlfriend was demanding that they meet. and he was caught in the middle. I want to refer back to what Anita said about the loneliness and the anxiety. Something which I have met is, especially when it comes to parents, that most of the time the anxiety came about because of the different roles they had to play within the family. Especially when it comes to parents of young children, toddlers, for instance, because a parent who has to work from home, it became very difficult to do two things at once. For instance, a parent who is potty training her toddler, and at the time that this is going on, she has a meeting with her colleagues and with her boss. So imagine a situation where the child is calling her and she's in the middle of a meeting. And the question that comes is, okay, do I be the good mother? Do I go and attend my son? Or do I be the good colleague? And this situation has created a collision of roles, where in order to be a good mother, sometimes I have to be a lousy colleague, or the other way around. Now, in the past, for instance, my grandmother, she used to do this beautifully. She used to go in the fields, she works in the field and take care of her children. They were used to it. But in our present time, in this way the society is organized, we are used to having these separate entities, work on one side, family on the other side. So adapting to this new situation has created anxiety because it was not easy for people to adapt as fast.
I think it's
bringing there are these memes online. It's generally the woman, but obviously men are going through the same thing, where you see somebody holding up a laptop with one hand, a child with the other, a cook, with the foot she's stirring the pot, that there's all these multiple roles that we're trying to cope with. And I was also reminded of another thing when, talking about anxiety, again, another case that I was working with is a lot of people are working from home right now. They're working online. So laptop in front of you, and we're managing to get the job done, even with therapy, more or less, it's manageable. It's not ideal, but it's manageable. Another cause of anxiety that's coming up is, so the person is doing their work, but there's this fear because they are not physically at their point of work, because their boss, their employees are not physically seeing them sitting at their laptop, getting up, checking a file, and so forth, or making phone calls to clients. There's a fear that they are inadequate, that their employees will think that they are not contributing enough. So again, there's this anxiety of, am I doing enough? Most of them are at peace, they're actually doing enough, but because they're out of sight, there's this nagging feeling, 𝘏𝙤 will I still have my job? Do they believe I'm getting my job done? So that's another cause for anxiety.
And this makes me question how far the organizations were able to adapt to the life of the employees. Because the way things happened, what was private became public now. You're doing a meeting and your child comes running in to show you what he drew. So things which used to be strictly at home, now colleagues have to adapt to seeing you get up and whatever, give a bottle or do something for the family. And I wonder how flexible organizations are able to be in such circumstances.
What we are discussing now with regards to these coexisting relationships, what brings to mind as well is the fact of boundaries. I think that we are at a stage, each and everyone at home, where we are learning how to recreate our boundaries. I think we have the issue of boundaries that changed completely, where there is no boundaries at all, as Shirley and you, Anita, are explaining. We are at home and a lot of things are happening at the same time. And this space where we have to somehow relearn and recreate new boundaries in a way.
The creative adjustment, we're always talking about in psychotherapy.
Yes. We spoke about loneliness, the sort of extreme loneliness, and I'm talking a little bit about boundaries. What I'm thinking about, I'm going back to the couples now because it's a little bit pointy. 𝙏𝙤 𝙃𝙤𝙚𝙃𝙤𝙧. Pero qabel immur għal din nieħu spunt u I remind the people who are listening to us on Facebook, they can comment, they can question things. Later on, some of our team members are here and they can give me the questions and I can ask. Going back a little bit to the couples, last year, I conducted a research, which was a qualitative research, and it had to do with intimate relating. When we speak about intimate relating, it means about relationship where intimacy exists. So we're talking about couples in a way. And it was interesting enough that I found that the couples that I interviewed, there was this movement from being in contact with the other to moving away from the other in order to be in isolation or in order to be on their own. So I'm thinking in one hand, we're saying there is this extreme loneliness and a lot of people are anxious at the moment. And the importance that even when we are in a relationship, how isolation is important. You know, because if we don't go in that isolation, if we don't have these boundaries, or if we don't be on our own, again, Anita, a little bit your team, like this relationship with your own, with yourself, I think if we don't do that and we are with too much contact with the other, I think this will create more issues. I don't know your opinion on this.
Yes, definitely. I mean, it's all about, you know, like you're saying, there's this coming together, there's this constant being part of the other. And there's almost this need, you know, like we're talking about the meme of the person trying to cope with everything, but within this sphere, there's the issue that we tend to forget about our own needs, and we're only as good as we can only give out. You know, if we're not in a good place ourselves, if we're not taking care of our own needs, there's very little that we can do to help others. You know, with all the good intentions in the world, if this isn't okay, if this isn't being taken care of, the output is definitely going to be affected.
Yes, and I think that one of the main challenges for couples was to find this new balance. And they had to recreate this new balance between time for solitude, where I can refresh myself on my own, and time together. Because if we are living in a restricted space, then how do we do it? And I believe that many people were able to be aware of this difficulty and to organize their time in a way that I have time for myself, you have time for yourself, and then we have time together. I mean, the simple activities. For instance, I cook, and while I cook, you go and do the laundry. So that's time where I can be by myself with my own thoughts, and then watch television together. I think if a couple is truly aware that this is going to be a difficulty between them, then they can manage it. But obviously, there needs to be a lot of communication.
Yes. Again, it's
sorry, Anthony. I was just reminded as well of, you know, on this subject, you know, when I sometimes urge clients to do a bit more self-care and have a bit more compassion for themselves, there's this guilt, I think, that comes up. You know, if I am thinking of me, that means I'm neglecting others, you know, and they use the word selfish, you know, I'm being selfish. I think it's healthy to be a bit self-centered every now and then. And how I actually refer to it in therapy is healthy selfish. You know, every now and then we need to pull this way, engage with ourselves, and then, you know, how we treat ourselves, I think reflects the way we end up treating others. You know, so it's you know, to use this term as, you know, I'm going to coin it here. This healthy selfish. You know, I think it's also very important.
Yes. I agree with you fully, Anita, and I meet this a lot with parents, because we are invaded with messages, with information on how to be a good parent and what do children need. And sometimes we forget parents, they need to take care of themselves as well.
I forget, yeah.
This is like when you are in an aeroplane they tell you that in an emergency, parent puts the oxygen mask first and then takes care of the child. And it's the same in this time. If I am stressed,
that's something I've always had difficulty with. I mean, it's a fantastic, I love using metaphors. It's a fantastic metaphor. And every time I'm on a flight, it's going to be a while now till I get on another one. But every time I'm on a flight and I hear the steward saying, take care of yourself first, strap yourself first, put your mask on if there's, it bothers me. And I think, how selfish, you know, that's wrong. But it's not wrong, because unless I am safe, if I am needing to take care of myself on this plane, how can I take care of the person next to me or the child? So it makes perfect sense.
Yes, and it's okay. I mean, for instance, when it comes to family members, I think children can be taught that, listen, this is the time where mommy and daddy will be with you. This is the time where mommy and daddy will not be with you. And I believe children can adapt. I think it's healthy for children to learn that, listen, mom and dad are not always available, that there will be time when you have to occupy yourself, when you have to create yourself a game. And obviously then there's time where the family can be together. But I think only when parents take care of themselves by doing simple things, even if it's just drinking a cup of tea on your own or just having a chat with your partner, this can lead to a better atmosphere in the family. Parents are calm, the family is calmer.
And it's cultivating life skills as well, you know, for the adult and for the children themselves, you know, seeing this role model, you know, happening, you know, they're actually experiencing it. So
it's true. In fact, there was a particular research which I really liked, and they studied 3 types of parents. There were the parents who were neglectful and sometimes abusive. Then there were the parents who were like helicopter parents, all the time looking at the children and their needs. And there were the parents who were at times present and at times they were not present. And they found that the most well-adjusted children came from the last group, those who were neither perfect, but they were neither abusive. Because in that type of parenting, the children, they had more time to explore in a safe place, but they could do independent skills. They could, you know, learn to occupy themselves. So being a good enough parent is okay. We don't have to be perfect all the time. It creates a lot of stress on us, and it can choke our children.
and even raise their expectations of how they're supposed to be in the world. You know, it's okay to make mistakes. You know, we learn from them.
What I'm thinking right now as well is this need for a balance. I think this is one of the main things that I share with couples when they come to therapy. I think that how would I know that a couple will not work out is by looking at the balance. I think that we all agree on this as psychotherapists. When there is no balance between what one person is giving and what one person is receiving, I think that says a lot, and that says that the couplehood will not work out. I think this is something that COVID is like a positive experience where we can learn from this, you know, where we can actually see who is the person giving a lot and who is the person receiving a lot, because each person should be able to balance the giving and the receiving. Otherwise, it will not be okay for the person who is giving a lot, who is always there like a helicopter, as you said it, Shirley, and the person who is only receiving and giving nothing.
So Anthony, we're not this isn't an expectation for it to be 50-50, right? I mean, obviously people have different traits, different they're stronger, their personality is stronger in different areas. So it's not about meeting exactly, you know, the levels can be different.
And when we are with clients in therapy, we basically teach them how, because what one person can give doesn't mean the other person have to give that thing as well, you know. So it's not about being 50-50. We talk about balance, but we also talk about what one person can give and what the other person can receive, and what the other person can give and receive, you know, because sometimes the issue might be also that I am not able to receive. I am not able to allow the other person to give me something.
And we tend to choose not just intimate partners, but we tend to choose the people around us and we look for things that are missing in us, you know. So
Yes.
again, about this balance, you know, and filling a certain void, you know, and that's how the balance occurs, I think, you know, when I am able to give something that's missing in someone else, and I look for my needs to be supported in someone else who can nourish me in that way.
Yes, and I agree with this so much, and I see it a lot as well in the experiences that I listen to. And what I see sometimes is that thing which attracted me the most to a person. For instance, I'm attracted because a person is contained and calm. But through time, that same quality that attracted me can become a quality which irritates me. So with a person, I'm attracted to a person because a person is humorous. There will be a time when I may not be so able to tolerate that humor. And in this thing, there's a lot of personal work that one has to do as well. Because eventually, if we choose people because they have the thing that we don't have, then that's a sign that we need to develop it in ourselves as well. I cannot say, okay, I will not be organized because my partner is organized. No. That creates
him or her, yeah.
we find people who can give us what we lack so that we can develop it in ourselves.
Yeah. But Shirley, we cannot say it does not have the benefits, no?
That's true. That's very true.
Anita, you spoke about metaphors, and one of the metaphors that clients are bringing to therapy, and something which I saw from the work YMCA are doing in the loneliness response time, is this metaphor of the space becoming smaller and smaller. I heard it many times. It's a metaphor where suddenly the home, the safe space that we have, where we usually
on most days,
where we usually used to enjoy and look forward to after a long day at work, is becoming somehow smaller and smaller. And some of the clients said that to the extent that it reminds them, you know, that the neighbor next door is experiencing the same thing, but then suddenly the wall has become solidified and closes on the person again, and the space, you know, quasi suffocazioni, ħanajda bil-Malti. I don't know whether this is something that you are seeing as well.
Yeah, I mean, there is, like we're saying, you know, in the past, there was a tendency for us to look forward to, you know, you get into the home, you kick off your shoes, you know, hallelujah, I'm home. Now it's almost as if the walls are closing in on us, whether it is because of, you know, the English expression, climbing up the walls because of boredom, or because there's you are suddenly with your family 24 hours on 24 hours, you know. So this, you know, this is something that is, you know, this metaphor of the finding that the space is getting smaller and smaller. But then again, we also spoke about, so for some people this is too much, and for others it's a welcome, you know, they're comfortable. It's this small world of their home is constant for them, and they're comfortable with it. It's not actually getting smaller and smaller. So it's different people are experiencing this, you know, these current times in very different ways. But I think even personally, and there are times where I do feel that my space is getting smaller and smaller, most definitely. Even a person living alone, it doesn't have to be, you know, because you're suddenly every room, there's somebody in every room, you know, and there's noise and there's things going on, the TV's blasting nonstop. But yes, you know, because we are restricted with our outside activities, the place is, you know, we are literally feeling confined. And there's this thing of, I don't know, another metaphor, this pressure cooker. If we don't have, you know, pressure cooker works by a little bit of water, it produces steam and cooks what's going on inside of it. If there's not enough water, this thing is going to pop. So I mean, I feel it's very related to the situation we're in. You know, what is our water? You know, if we're what is our steam and water? What's missing? Not to allow the space to get too small. So I mean, that's something that through therapy, through you know, okay, our activities are lessened. There's less opportunities to be on the outside, but there's still many alternatives that we can look at. Hopefully, this is something we can also look into today. Maybe giving a few tips on how to cope, not allow the space to get too small.
Yes. Shirley, from your side?
I have seen two types of situations. There are people who got even busier with what was happening, and they had to fit everything, like childcare, doing homeschooling the kids, doing meetings, doing notes, and they have to do so many things. So for them, this situation was, like you're saying, it was very restrictive. But then I met other people that welcomed the situation because it gave them more time. Right now, what's coming to mind is the morning routine. So whereas before, in the morning, we had to
rush
everything in order to make it on time and be at the office at 8:30.
Traffic.
Now we have the time, we have this luxury.
Yeah.
It's a luxury we did not have before. And even a simple activity can turn into a mindful exercise. So within the morning, I used to get my toast and get my coffee and eat them in the car while waiting in traffic. Now I have the time to do my coffee, to wash the cup, to take my coffee in front of the window and look at my plants.
Sit with yourself. Have your time as well.
Time where I can feel that I'm living, not always on automatic pilot.
Yeah.
So this was a good chance for some people to just pause and be in the moment.
And be.
Which is something which I think the hurried lifestyle does not allow us.
Be present.
We're coming to an end very soon, I think. So I'm thinking, what if we move to the tips bit? Because Anita said, let's give the people who are listening to us a little bit of tips. So Anita, I will go immediately to you because you have thought about this already, I think. All right. So the tips to the people who are listening to us, how we can foster our relationships and all these issues that we have discussed today.
So I'm going to maybe concentrate a bit, just a few minutes, concentrate on fostering a relationship with ourselves. So I'm going to abandon my environment for the time being, the outside world, and talk about self-containment. So I don't know, I've jotted down a couple of tips. I did a bit of research. I'm just going to go through them quickly. Keeping a diary seems to be a very important thing. It allows you to explore your own thoughts, and it's something that you can go back to. And if you manage to cope somehow today, and in 2 days' time you're having a similar problem, even going back and reading your thoughts, I think that's quite containing. And it will remind us on how to cope. Meditation and mindfulness is something that you both spoke about today. I think that's really important. So practicing the art of meditation can give us some distance from our inner critic. I think our superego, that's always telling us to check things and to check consequences and to heed a bit too much. I think it gives us a bit of being in the present moment and not allowing, distancing ourselves from judgment, this preconceived judgment and expectations. Setting boundaries, you spoke about relationships as well. So having your voice heard, I think that's important, and your needs. Another thing I found really interesting was in these times, allowing ourselves to fail. It's not always about being successful. There is, no one is perfect, and this is a learning curve most of the time. It might not sound like the most appealing thing in the world, it's okay to fail, who wants to fail? Nobody wants to fail. But I think not getting it right the first time forces us to sort of take a step back and reevaluate, so there's much to be learned in that regard. Volunteering, I think, is another thing that would be, definitely helpful. Studies show that volunteering helps people who donate their time to feel a bit more socially connected. So right now we are socially disconnected. But there's still things we can do. You know, there's, I was speaking about, I have it's very dear to my heart working with the elderly. There's a lot of elderly who have to stay indoors. So even volunteering on, calling your neighbor, do you need any shopping? There's a lot of organizations online, that are organizing these type of things. Restaurants who are offering free meals, picking them up, taking them, and not just the elderly. There's also people who have been hit on a financial level. So it's something that can give us a good feeling as well of giving something back. Doing something new. I mean, there's this whole thing right now of, I don't know if you've noticed, everyone's baking bread. There's this thing, there's no yeast and there's no flour. It's always, the shelves are always empty in the supermarkets. What is this about? I think it's going back to basics. It's also about doing something relaxing, doing something from scratch, doing something for someone else within our family. The scent of fresh bread is fantastic anyway, that gives us a happy feeling. So I think trying something new, there's painting, there's so many things yoga, there's so many things online that we can reach out to without having to step out of the home, and to keep safe. This thing about social media, we've been hearing it time and time again, spend as little time as possible on social media. And it's not just about listening to the news about the pandemic, which may raise our anxiety.
Not during our webinars, Anita. During our webinars, they can connect.
That's it, yes. So limited time, we're saying, not to spend too much time. What I wanted to point out with the social media is, so less about the actual news, but about there's this tendency to compare ourselves to others.
Yes.
So our self-worth takes a bit of a slam. So maybe less of the social media. I think it will give you time to maybe focus on developing habits of self-worth and better relationship with yourself in the same time. Regular making time for yourself. Shirley mentioned before this thing of, you're not rushing out to work with the toast and coffee in your hand. You have time to spend those 10 minutes away from traffic, hide yourself on the balcony if needs be from the kids, or, maybe you have the luxury of living alone, and spend those 10 minutes having time to yourself. And I think last but not least, being your own best friend. What advice would you give to a friend, who's going through a difficult time? Maybe we need to turn that inwards and listen to, what we're telling others, maybe to listen to it ourselves. So those
Anita and Shirley, a question that people who are watching us are asking is, what if you are living in an environment where anxiety is predominant? How should one go about it?
I think it depends if the anxiety is something that the person is experiencing or if it's anxiety that the family members are experiencing. I'm not sure if either way. I mean, if Anita gave very good tips on how a person can cope with anxiety. But one thing which I really agree on is the reaching out. When something new happens, when we go through this new experience, we find it very hard to understand what's happening. If I had to give a very simple example, if I'm driving a car and I hear a noise at the back of the car, I panic. I would say, what's going on? I mean, is the car going to get on fire? Is the engine going to fall? But when I go to the mechanic and I ask him what's happening, and he will tell me, oh no, it's just a small problem with the wheel, then I would know what's wrong and I would feel relieved. And this is the same with anxiety. So we have to talk, we have to reach out and understand what is happening, because anxiety is a very big word. But yes, but what are you anxious? Is there something that's worrying you? Is there something which you can do about it? Is the situation so much out of control? Or is there something which you can perhaps change in it? So I think the first thing that one has to do is to understand himself or herself, because understanding the situation is already the first step towards doing something about it.
So you're saying your perception of it, that's something we can, most times we can't control what's happening on the outside, but we can control our perception. And I think a lot of anxiety stems from missing information. So this example that you just mentioned, that noise at the back of your car and your head suddenly spills with irrational thoughts. But once you seek it out, you seek out the information from the right source, the mechanic in this case.
Exactly.
You can reassure yourself, and with that information, you're you definitely release most of your anxiety, because then you have something to work with. It's not just all in your head.
And we are lucky that presently in this crisis situation, there have been many organizations who are offering help. There's phone calls, there's an online service, online support. So this is one of the things that I would support a person to do. That when there's anxiety, reach out, look for professional support. There are people out there who can help you start to understand yourself and start to see the situation. Sometimes what one really needs is a change of perspective, because when we are in anxiety, it's like we're drowning. We cannot focus. We're in panic. But if one can see it from top, the situation in a different angle, then it's something which can help us to cope better.
Another question that came in is about this anxious environment. Let's put it this way: the anxious environment. So, and the question is, if you have a good idea of the person who is creating this environment, because sometimes we know from our heart, we know
where it's coming from.
Who is creating this bad energy or bad vibe or this anxious environment. The people are asking us, should we ignore it, or should we be passive, or should we confront the person?
I think this is a difficult one, because especially in relationships, it's often difficult to be assertive, and for your voice to be heard. However, when you assert your rights in a relationship at work, with your partner, and you speak up about your needs and kind of refuse to accept injustice, unfair, people being unfair or inconsiderate or even abusive treatment, you are showing that you are worthy of respect. Sometimes we forget that. There's all this thing about respecting others, but we often enable, almost contribute to the lack of respect. I'm not saying it's always the person's fault, but sometimes there's this thing of us actually enabling. So being treated well by others will obviously boost your self-esteem. And this goes for any relationship in life. So asserting your needs, and I think not settling for less and having a voice is quite is important, and it's about respecting yourself at the end of the day.
Yes, I agree with you. Sorry, Anthony, you were going to speak.
No, go on.
I agree with you a lot, Anita, on this point, but I think what one needs to keep in mind as well is being tactful. Yeah. So if I am confronted with a very angry partner and I will go on to assert myself, most probably this will escalate the situation. So I think one has to study and sometimes experiment. Yeah. Okay, I will be assertive, but I will be assertive when this person is calm or when he just woke up and he's ready to listen to me. So I think one has to really study the situation and see where, when, and what to say in that particular context.
What I was going to say is that we also have a psychological term we use, which is co-creating. Sometimes we would be co-creating something in the sense that we would be facilitating this hostile environment. We would be somehow participating in this hostile environment. I'm not saying that the person who asks this question is doing this, but even thinking about the fostering relationships as a general topic, sometimes we would be accepting the pain that other people are giving us. So we need to go into this examination mode and examine how are we participating in this, behavior we don't like, because for sure we would be somehow participating, or for sure there is something that we can do from our end which can help the situation.
Sometimes it's like a loop, so need to examine where to break that loop.
Yes.
The problem is seeing this is the hardest part, Anthony, because we tend to blame the other person. It's his fault. It's not my fault.
Yes, and that's why reaching out is important, because reaching out, the people out there will see what we are not seeing. That is why therapy works, and that is why people come to us in therapy, because we would be able to see what the other people are not seeing.
Yes, and
time is running out very soon, and I before we close, I wanted to ask you, Shirley, about any tips with regards to family, with regards to families, because you mentioned a lot
Yes.
parenthood, and maybe also a little bit about the careerhood, because this is something that parents grumbled a lot about in the past weeks.
True. It's true. I think Anita did a fantastic job while you were speaking, Anita. I was listening and learning. Maybe if I had to focus on one thing which you, Anita, already mentioned, was being kind to oneself, especially when it comes to parenthood, because I feel that parents were overwhelmed with demands. The fact that schools closed, they had to be the teachers of their children, something which was quite stressful for some parents. So I think one of the things we have to do, which can help us cope with this, is see the situation the way it is. It is a hard situation, and we are doing the best we can. Putting too high expectations, it can be daunting. We can be overwhelmed. I mean, if we had to think, I want to finish all the syllables at home and make sure that my kid is prepared for next year, no, that's too big a task. So we can just do small, doable tasks and be happy with what we have achieved. Something else which can help a lot is to observe ourselves. And observe our family. So if I notice that my child is always getting angry when I call her to eat, I can go about it and see, as you said before, see my part in the situation. How can I do it better? So apart from being kind to ourselves, we also have to be aware of our patterns. What are we doing to help a situation? And what are we doing to make it worse? Because this self-examination helps us a lot. I don't know if we have time to go into the work side.
Yes.
Okay. For people who are working,
maybe before we go into the work bit, the career bit, maybe we can also mention, because we said self-examination. I think self-examination plus the fact that we seek help from the outside, also to answer the new question that came in, would allow us to take a better decision, because sometimes, it wouldn't be something that is easy to take, especially when there is mental health issues involved, because the question is about mental health issues, whether the other person who is creating these bad vibes suffer from mental health issues. What can we do about that? And that is not easy. And this is a topic that we didn't mention, in fact, because staying at home with mental health difficulties is something which is not easy. And with my hand on heart, I have a lot of affection towards these people who are doing wonders and able to be with them and able to care for these people. But I think that apart from the self-examination, seeking help is very important, because sometimes it is not about taking the decision yourself. Sometimes it is about getting that extra support one needs to be able to lessen a little bit the blow. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
Careerhood, Shirley.
Okay, I'm very aware of the time. I know that it's
no worries.
It's something we're always battling, even during a client session. The time.
Yes.
But I think as far as career is concerned, as long as one is able to keep a boundary between what is work and what is family life, then it should be okay. There was a particular research which found out that people who worked at home sometimes had a bigger problem and much more, they found it more difficult to separate work from home, because when you're at home, you would say, oh, I will just send this email, or I will just do this phone call. And in that way, the work, it's like spills over family life.
Yeah.
So keeping this strict boundary helps us to give our share due to work and to our share to the family. I think this is one of the things that's coming to mind right now.
I saw something today. One of our colleagues, Rosette Sides, Sario, put up on Facebook today, and I just wanted to share it because I thought it was very meaningful. Could just read it quickly. So she wrote, even when we make mistakes, even when nobody seems to care, even when we are at our worst, charity begins at home. We start by loving and respecting ourselves first. I thought it was very significant to even our, this fostering relationships with ourselves and with others. I came across it today. I wanted to share.
Last tip from my end when it comes to couplehood, because you have mentioned everything basically. You've taken all my ideas, Shirley and Anita. I think when it comes to couplehood, the last thing maybe that I can share with the viewers and those listening to us, or maybe those that will listen to us tomorrow, I think dating is important. Maybe people will ask, my dating restaurants are closed, everything is closed. But I always keep saying this to my clients, dating is important. When was the last time that you two went out on a date? Because dating is the little bit at the beginning, then serious things comes in, and then they marry, and then people,
They prioritize differently. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think dating is something which should remain a top priority throughout the whole lifetime experience of a relationship. I think couples should find the time to date. And they must be creative with dating. It doesn't have to be a very expensive dating experience. It can be something in the balcony at home.
And this pandemic has given us the opportunity almost to examine this further, to really become creative.
Exactly.
Yes, I agree with you. And yes, I think this dating, it's reminding me of play. Yes. When we were young, we were allowed to play and we were encouraged to play. But then when we grow up, it's like play stops. But it doesn't have to be. We have to find new ways, new styles how to entertain ourselves together if we have to keep strong relationships.
Okay, so we are basically at the end of the webinar. They're giving me another question. So perhaps something on money matters and relationship. I don't know if you want to say something about money matters and relationships. What comes to mind is that in couplehood, we argue a lot about money and financial issues. Maybe this is a big topic which creates a lot of difficulties in relationships, and it creates a lot of demands, and financial restraints sometimes affects the relationship. I don't know if you want to share something about this.
Well, it's a big topic. This deserves a webinar on its own, Anthony. Because money is about control, it's about power, it says a lot of things.
Yes, so yes.
Maybe we can dedicate more time to this.
Yes. I can say that also at YMCA we are discussing on the second edition of these webinars discussions. So this must, we will take this topic in consideration. Maybe we can do something on it. Maybe we can do something on it. We are at the end of the workshop. Last thing that I will say to the people who are listening to us from our team, they will upload some articles which are on the topics of relationships when it comes to intimate relationships with oneself, and also careerhood, parenthood. There will also be 2 posters which YMCA volunteers have created. They are the self-examination bit where people can simply download the picture and examine a little bit where they can do better.
A bit of self-therapy.
Exactly, a bit of self-therapy. I will switch to Maltese now, Wissa. Nirringrazzja lilek Anita u lilek Shirley li kontu magħna għal din is-sija, naħseb biżna s-sija sew issa. Nixtieq nistieden lin-nies bħal speċi jkunu magħna anke l-ġimgħa d-dieħla l-erbgħa li ġej fis-7 ta' filgħaxija nkunu qegħdin niddiskutu suġġett importanti wkoll time management, kif we manage a little bit our time, ħanajdu hekk. Anita, thank you very much. Rituals Malta, follow jawa fuq Facebook. Shirley Galea, listening to you. Follow jawa minna ħatakom ukoll. Grazzi li kontu magħna.
Grazzi li l-Anti.
Grazzi tal-opportunità, grazzi.
Thank you. Issa ħanajat lil min waqqaf il-Facebook għax m'għandix idea kif nagħmilha. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.